There will be a slight delay.
Hi everyone, this is the strangest thing, doing our first live stream performance. We're pretty psyched, but I've never really done a radio show, so this is very strange. Yes.
You can hear me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay.
So,
Yay.
There he is. By the way, that picture of me is like 15 years old.
Have to be repeated back to so I think it's time to start.
Hi there, audience. If you are there and you want to say hi to us, please feel free to post something on the chat. I can see that 91 of you are watching, so that's awesome. We have an audience. So thank you.
Amazing.
Without further ado, let's get started. First, just a quick intro. We are C4, the Choral Composer Conductor Collective. And this is something new for us, and also I think new worldwide, to be having a remote live stream choral concert. So we're pretty psyched, and we would love to hear what you think about it and your feedback for improving things in future live stream remote performances that we hope to hold. First up on our program is a new work by myself, Karen Siegel. It is called Here I Am. And the full text is, here I am, with you in spirit, with you in song. And I wrote this piece as a gift to the choral community in response to the current health crisis.
Here I am, here I am, here I am, here I am, here I am,
that was Here I Am. Before I go on to the next piece, I am supposed to mention that we have a virtual tip jar out, and I have to open up my YouTube screen to see what that is. Oh, I can see comments. You're talking to us. Thank you.
Yay! Thanks for coming.
It says
And-
thunderous applause.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's the part we need to hear.
It's very strange not
Everybody.
having any applause afterwards.
It is.
I'm going to show my face now and then turn the camera off again so I don't crash my computer.
And by the way, I'm really moving, although you can't tell.
So I'm looking for the thing from Elise that says exactly what the, Elise, will you please post the Venmo code so people can, if they want to make a donation for this free concert, they can do so. Like all choirs and all musical organizations, we have lost expected ticket revenue this spring.
Oh,
So
I
think
found
she's-
our handle on Venmo. Sorry to interrupt. On Venmo, our username is @C4 Ensemble.
And
Which
that's
you might
a letter C
expect.
number 4. Thank you, Jamie.
No
So
problem.
next up is a piece by Arvo Pärt from 1990, The Beatitudes. And it is with organ. So David will be playing the organ for us.
There he is.
You can't see David, but he's here. Oh, let me fix that. Now David should be seen. Apologies.
There's David.
Hi, David. That's important that we see you. And I should note that the Beatitudes is going to be very different from how you've heard it before. This is our adaptation, making it appropriate for remote choir. Take it away, David.
Can we change it so that we see David first? Because Karen, you're locked on, right? Thanks.
Sorry, just a moment. All fixed?
So I will cue. Yeah. Okay. Let's hear the pitches again.
so much for tuning in to this first live stream performance of ours. Now we're going to have a little Q&A. So I'm browsing the chat window right now, I'm seeing amazing comments. Thank you, everyone. I'm not seeing any questions yet, so if you have any questions for us, please chat them. Please type them up. And someone was asking about PayPal. Yes, we have PayPal, but you can also Venmo us at C4 Ensemble. If you feel like leaving a tip, we appreciate that. More thunderous applause, thank you.
Oh.
Thanks, everyone.
It doesn't seem like anyone actually has any questions, so perhaps we should just hand this over to Brian and Daniel to give a little background on how this became possible. And while that's going on, if you think of questions, then please type them into the chat window. Brian, Daniel?
Sure.
Which one do you want to start?
Can you hear me?
Go ahead,
I'm
Brian.
back on now, right?
I
Yeah,
see
we
you.
can hear you.
Okay, I was off during the organ thing. So during that last last one, I was playing the organ pedal part, and then David was playing the hand stuff.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt,
Oh.
Brian? Because
Yes, I
there's
saw
a
that.
comment that we should turn off the reverb while we're talking. Can you do that, please?
Sure.
Thank
What,
you.
we're not in a cathedral anymore?
We've left the cathedral and are
We're in the
back in our
cathedral, and
bedrooms and
now we're
offices.
in the padded social room adjacent. We're back in the green room, having finished our concert and
Very good.
having a talk back with our favorite patrons, which is you all. So yeah, what can I can describe basically. We are using this software called Jamulus, which was originally developed so that electric guitar players and bass players and singers could get together and jam. That's the name. But we're kind of subverting it for our choral purposes. Jamulus was designed so that the latency would be as small as possible so that you would be able to play in time. But we've decided instead to bump our latency as much as we can by increasing the buffer size and everything so that we get as much differential between the different parts as we can, and then we are singing pieces and writing pieces, in Karen's case, that kind of play off of that whole thing. Someone's typing, I see.
Oh, that
There's
was
some
me. I
cool
was saying thank you
questions.
for the questions because we do now have questions.
Excellent. So we're using Jamulus, and everyone has Jamulus installed on their computer and is using it to do the audio. But because Jamulus is an audio-only thing, we also have a Zoom call, and everyone is connected to the Zoom call with the sound off so that you can see our lovely faces. And then I have Jamulus running in a slightly more complicated setup, and then Jamulus and the screen capture are going through OBS to be streamed out to YouTube. But those details are probably more complicated than you want to know. And Daniel set up a trusty Jamulus server, which you use to tie all this together. There's a server running in Pennsylvania somewhere on Google Cloud, which is accepting all of our audio and sending it back and mixing it together and everything.
So we have questions now, and I will. So the first one is, how is the audio synced with no lag? And actually, it's not synced without lag. There is some lag to the audio, but the lag for the video is much worse than the lag for the audio because the software Jamulus is superior to Zoom for handling that data.
And Reginald asked, what do we hear? We each hear a mix of everybody else. And so we each get some kind of mix down of everyone. We can choose the levels. And then, for example, Brian, in addition to mixing it down, also adds reverb and then pipes it into OBS. Someone asked what OBS is. That's Open Broadcast Software. It's open source. Jamulus is also open source. OBS, Open Broadcast Software, also open source, which lets you connect to many broadcast services like YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, I think, whatever, these kinds of places where you can live stream.
So we have a question of how can we hear you all of us at once. Is that the magic of Jamulus? And you are hearing 100% the audio used in Jamulus. We're all muted in Zoom, but it is also possible to hear all of us on Zoom for choirs that want to do this without all of the technical setup of Jamulus. I have done that with choirs in rehearsal for their own live stream performances using the original sound settings on Zoom. Simple question of how many are there? Can't see us all. There are 10 of us right now. And theoretically, there may be a limit to how many people we can have on Jamulus. We haven't reached that limit yet, but I think it's going to be, Zoom is practically unlimited if you want to pay for an expensive plan that can fit 1,000 or more people. But Jamulus would have the limitation somewhere along the way. What else? What does each singer actually hear? It varies depending on the quality of our own internet connections. So one of the singers was complaining just before the concert started. He was really worried because he says, everyone sounds really grainy and horrible. And Brian, who was doing the mix, said, "Oh, don't worry. That's just on your end."
Hopefully. I mean, you
We'll
might sound
find
a little
out.
grainy, a little horrible, but not as much as Mario was hearing.
Oh,
I
yeah.
like to think.
Just semi-horrible.
See any more?
I
Can
like
you-
the question, how did you get over your latency problems? I didn't. It still really bothers me a lot,
Yeah.
even though it's much less than it has been on previous experiments. It's kind of one of those things like if you were singing in a canon or something, you just have to ignore the other parts but also listen to them. So it's
But
It's a challenge.
Lots of focus.
Jamulus also gives you the ability to mute yourself so that you don't have to hear the delayed version of yourself in your headphones, which can be somewhat disorienting. So you can mute yourself, but that doesn't mean you're muted to everyone else. So everyone has their own independent mix, and one of the first things you often do is turn yourself down, because that's the last thing you want to hear.
And the other thing is, before we embraced the latency, we did see how low we could make it, and in the document that Elise linked in the comments earlier, and is also in the description, we found a couple of things like using wired internet instead of Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Makes a
And a
big
coup-
difference.
Makes a big difference. Now, these are sort of well-known issues if you want to do live jamming, and we experimented with trying to reduce the latency. We may do something where the latency is low, but for now we've embraced it. The latency, that is.
A question about the Pärt and the transition between the original and streamed notation. So we performed this piece many years ago, back when it fit our guidelines of within the past 25 years. We are, due to the global pandemic, our guidelines are getting stretched a little bit, because it's one of the few pieces that we could think of that that seemed appropriate, because it's one statement by the choir at a time in chunks, and in the original we're all supposed to sing in homophony, but it's very static harmonically within each phrase. So it seemed to me that it would lend itself nicely to an aleatoric treatment. So what we did was purposely stagger it and alter the tempi and rhythms a little bit within each voice part so that we were not together. And we repeated each phrase twice to kind of milk it. What else?
Roy asks, why did you decide to use a lot of reverb? Because
Sorry, was it
it's
too
kind.
much reverb?
We don't have a church.
I can turn it down.
No,
It sounds pretty bad without any reverb, but maybe I overdid it because I came of age in the 1980s when synth pop was the thing, and you could never have too much reverb.
Also, I think we're still getting over the fact that we didn't have enough reverb on our first album. We're overcompensating.
Yeah.
Someone asked, did we try Jack Trip? I did not. Brian, Daniel, did you?
I can talk about Jack Trip. So, Jack Trip is a similar kind of thing that's designed to network a bunch of audio streams together. And if we use Jacktrip, we'd be able to connect all of us to one central server. But the thing is, Jamulus then has a built-in mixer that can mix an independent mix for each person under their independent control and then send it back to people. If we use Jacktrip, we would need to then run a mixer that probably would just create a single mix for everyone and then would send it back to everyone through another set of Jacktrip channels. So Jacktrip is a tool that can be used to build really industrial strength setups, but Jamulus kind of works out of the box for what it does, and it has features that would be difficult to replicate in Jacktrip. It could be that Jacktrip could give us slightly lower latency. I'm not totally sure, but since we're embracing the latency, that would be bad.
We already answered that. We have a request to sing some simple harmony. Roy wants to know what that sounds like without the reverb.
You know what? We should try the thing where we have the jitter buffers at 0, or we could start by singing the harmony, and then we could all slowly lower our jitter buffers to 0, and
Careful.
turn into noise.
Oh, you know what? We have a request to turn the reverb back on.
No.
Huh.
Lots
All
of
right, so-
requests to turn it back on.
Okay.
It seems that the one person who said we should not have it on had it going
Well,
in two
perhaps
different
there's a-
windows.
This is probably not that the medium you're looking for. You'll hear this in half a minute or so. But in the meantime, I'm going to turn it back down to here.
And
So
yes,
it's-
someone answered a question within the chat. Yes, both OBS and Jamulus are free. And one nice thing about Jamulus is it works on Windows and Mac and Linux. So
So now we have some reverb back. Should we
Charles.
do the thing where we sing the C major chord, sing our favorite,
Can we all pick the same vowel?
Yes.
just using mind meld or some?
Yes. No, let's do an ooh.
Ooh is good.
All right, and then we're going to try the thing where we then fade our jitter buffers down.
yeah.
That's
that
not
sounds
gonna
good.
work, by the way,
Oh, why's that? Oh,
because
you
we have a
set it up
patch
so
server.
high?
Yeah.
Oh.
All right, well, we're going to try it anyway.
It's,
Can we have a
it's
C
too
again?
robust. We can try it. Sure.
I'm just going to, we can start. Ooh, sorry.
Finally,
Well
is there any settings that we could demo changing? Because we can't change jitter buffer is really cool. We can't turn off the thing that shows that.
Did anyone try it, or people weren't
I
trying
did.
it?
I tried
did.
it. It didn't do anything.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Daniel-
it's too robust. I
Daniel's
robustified it. Sorry.
powerful hack to Jamulus defeated our attempts to destroy our sound.
Yeah, Jamulus is not just free; it's open source, so you can go and change the source code. And we have a custom C4 version that has increased buffer sizes just in case of bad connections. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what else we could do. We'll have to work on that. How about that? We'll experiment with ways of degrading. We could connect. Yeah, never mind. I had a server running here at my house, but once you had more than one person on it, everyone sounded like they were 20,000 leagues under the sea. So I think if we ran it with 10 people, it would crash.
That would be amazing.
And we have requests for more songs, and you will get that at our next performance.
Yeah,
We have a pretty good excuse for having a
pieces.
short
Rhymable.
concert, given that each rehearsal that we had was about 90% tech and a little bit of 10% of singing at the end. So now that we have the tech figured out, we can usually get to singing earlier, although today we had all sorts of random problems that took about 45 minutes to resolve.
No.
Yeah, we got in
Just in
some
time.
Yeah, just in time, just for you. But yes, we plan to do it again, and more things will be forthcoming, and probably reprises of your favorites that you heard today.
So thanks for tuning in.
Can we get a round of applause for David on the organ, please?
Yes.
Nice job.
And thanks
And
to
Lynn.
And Lynn, yeah, Lynn.
Oh, and
thank you,
Lynn.
Lynn, for turning, and
right,
thank
she's,
you to all of you who
recording
tuned in. We've had over 100 people watching
Wow.
this. 96 of whom are still watching on to the end.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
Pretty good.
Imagine a crowded small concert hall. Thank you, and I am sure you will all get home safely.
Have a safe commute.
Be safe. Be safe, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, Daniel and Brian.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.
Auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.